Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We'll call to order the corrected notice of the special meeting and agenda of the Miami Special Utility Authority for Thursday, January the 24th, 2013 at 6 p.m. here in the Miami Civic Center, filed in the office of the city clerk and posted in the main lobby and the north outside entryway of the Miami Civic Center at 12:30 p.m. on January the 23rd, 2013. The trust may discuss, consider, and vote on any item listed in this agenda. We're called to order. Item 2, the consent agenda. The following items are on the consent agenda. All items listed under the consent agenda are deemed to be non-controversial and routine in nature by the governing board. They will be approved by one motion of the Miami Special Utility Authority. The items on the consent agenda will not be discussed. Any member of the governing board desiring to discuss an item on the consent agenda may request that it be removed from the consent agenda and placed in its proper order on the regular agenda. Any member of the governing board can also move to add items from the regular agenda to the consent agenda and make one motion and vote to approve. We have items A, B, C, and D. Gentlemen?
Motion to approve, Mayor.
Second.
Trustee Johnson?
Aye.
Trustee Sharbit?
Aye.
Trustee Tressler?
Aye.
Trustee Schultz?
Aye.
Chairman Ketcher?
Aye. All ayes. Motions have passed. Item 3, public input. Anybody wishing to address this utility board this evening? None. We'll go to item 4, accept staff recommendations and authorize chairman's signature to enter into contract with Ola Meter Corporation for meter reading services. Kevin Browning? Evening, Kev.
Good evening. Back in early December, we came before you to ask if we could send out an RFP on contract the meter reading out. We received 4 RFPs back on that, and this Ola meter was, to us, after reviewing recommendations and references, the best price point to benefit us. They have the ability to grow with us, and with all the references we checked, that was the only company that was currently still using Ola meter and satisfied in multi-year contracts with Ola meter. And they actually, their price point is at 49 cents per meter, where in-house we're at 60 cents a meter right now. So, and we checked all references with all companies, and they came out to be the best price point for what they offer.
They give any recommendations to keep them employed doing that, or do they have anything to say?
No, they're in Lawton, they're in Houston, and we talked to those companies. We talked to many cities that they use their references for.
Okay.
And the only suggestions they really had was they have the ability to grow with us. If we're going to go to an automated meter reading system in the future, they have the ability to provide that. So it's a company that has their hand in a little bit of everything, but they have the ability to go in multiple functions any way we want to go.
And again, how much is the savings by using this company compared to where we're doing it now?
About 19 cents per meter. And that's per meter, not per read, so that's per
Right.
meter.
So on an annual basis, have we calculated out the savings?
It's close to about $12,000 a year.
And I'm assuming that includes all the benefits that go along with an FTE for that, as far as healthcare, time off, etc. That figure includes all those items.
Yes.
In comparison. And so I'm assuming what they would do then is they would hire and train, or send someone here who would be in this area, or is it something where they're only here for so many days a month?
No, they want to hire locally to fill the positions. They want to come in and just replace the 2 readers we have now.
Right.
They want to use our same routes, our same equipment. So there's not a major software change. There's not any kind of major upgrades in equipment or anything like that. So they want to hire 2 people, and they've actually approached our 2 employees to see if they want to continue that job, and they didn't. And so they're looking to hire 2 new employees and come in and do the same functions that we're doing now.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, we've offered up other opportunities for these employees inside the organization. So this isn't a reduction of workforce.
Okay. Any further comments or questions, gentlemen? Kevin?
This wouldn't affect the billing cycle, or that would,
It won't change anything from what we're doing right now. They're essentially bringing two people in to do what we're doing right now.
Just as a comment, this is a good window for us to look at something like this because our long-range goals are to move to an automatic metering system, so we're not reading it all, it's all instantaneous. Because we have a creative opportunity here with the employees who have opportunities in the organization to move to other positions that they find positive, we might not have that same window in the future if we looked at doing this. So this is a good opportunity to take advantage of that window at this point in time.
A couple of protections are built in. One, the agreement prohibits assignment of their, duties or rights under the contract, so we know that we would continue to do business with the people that we made the agreement with. The contract does provide for a 90-day written notice termination, so while the contract has a term, if you don't like it, you can get out on 90 days notice and prorate your contractual payment.
And on the other side of that, if something happens and we terminate this company or any company, since they're using our equipment and our same routes, if we have to pick this process back up, we already have everything to start that. So, a 90-day window is plenty of time for us to restart a program if we'd have to.
And sort of along those lines, the agreement provides that the city would have access to all of the records that they create while they're administering the service for us. So again, if there were a termination, there's a remedy to make sure that we don't face some strange gap in documentation or anything like that.
There's no other questions. I'd make a motion to approve.
Do you need to address the nomenclature issue?
I will. One thing that you will notice that will be different from the packet that was circulated, in the packet, the contract was identified as an agreement between the city of Miami and the contractor. Based on follow-up discussions between myself and Mr. Bishop, we were asking you to approve the contract with a substitution of terms showing that the contracting party is not the city of Miami as a governmental unit, but rather the special utility authority, which is administering the utility plant of the city. And if you'll allow that substitution in your motion.
I would make the motion then with that substitute language.
One other thing, Scott, when they talk about the price, they say 0.0491, I think it is, cents, and it should be dollars. It's basically almost 50 cents a meter, but that's not what the contract reads, is they just substituted the wrong word, and so we need to also make clear that it's 0.0491
I would revise my motion to
dollars.
reflect the language that the city attorney has pointed out, and also Councilman Schultz.
Thank you. I would second that motion.
Okay, Trustee Tressler?
Aye.
Trustee Schultz?
Aye.
Trustee Johnson?
Aye.
Trustee Sharbit?
Aye.
Chairman Ketcher?
Aye. All ayes, that has passed. Thank
Thank
you. Thank you, Kevin. Item 5, 10-year employee recognition for Greg Blaylock, Scott Baldridge. Hi, Scotty.
Good evening, gentlemen. Here to acknowledge Greg Blaylock. Greg, come on up. Greg has been with the city 10 years, and Greg has been employed by the city of Miami since January of 2003. He graduated from Miami High School in 1995. Greg and his wife, Jean Ann, have been married for 8 years. They have 2 children, Micah, age 7, and Caden, age 14 months, which he was talking to us a while ago. And Greg enjoys fishing and hunting and playing softball. He is a real asset to the city, and I'm glad Greg works in my department. And he's actually the first employee I had the privilege of hiring. He's still here with me today. So at this time, I'd like to give Greg a $25 check for his 10 years service. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Greg, for your service. Item 6, board members' community announcements. Gentlemen, do you have any announcements? None. Item 7, staff reports. You have written reports included in your packet. We have those present if you need to ask any questions on your packet. Any questions?
No, sir.
Item 8, adjournment.
Motion adjourned, Mayor.
Second.
Trustee Sharbutt?
Aye.
Trustee Trussler?
Aye.
Trustee Schultz?
Aye.
Trustee Johnson?
Aye.
Chairman Ketcher?
Aye. All ayes. We're adjourned at 6:10. Good evening. Call to order the corrected notice special meeting agenda of the Miami City Council for Thursday, January the 24th, 2013 at 6:18 p.m. Located here in the Miami Civic Center. Filed in the office of the city clerk and posted in the main lobby in the north outside entryway of the Miami Civic Center at 12:30 p.m. on January the 23rd, 2013. The council may discuss, consider, and vote on any item listed in this agenda. We're called to order. I'm going to ask Neil Johnson to say our prayer and remain standing. We'll do our Pledge of Allegiance.
Let's pray. Father, tonight, as we do the city business, we just ask you to guide us in our decisions. Father, we're thankful to live in a city with so many great people, and our city employees are just, we thank them for the job they do. And Father, we just ask that you protect our city and our citizens. In Jesus' name, amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Item 4, citizens input. Anybody wishing to address our city council tonight? Being none, we'll go to item 5, consent agenda. The following items are on the consent agenda. All items listed on the consent agenda are deemed to be non-controversial and routine in nature by the governing board. They will be approved by one motion of the Miami City Council. The items on the consent agenda will not be discussed. Any member of the governing board desiring to discuss an item on the consent agenda may request that it be removed from the consent agenda and placed in its proper order on the regular agenda. Any member of the governing board can also move to add items from the regular agenda to the consent agenda and make one motion and vote to approve. Gentlemen, tonight we have items A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Councilman Schultz?
Aye.
Councilman Trussler?
Aye.
Councilman Johnson?
Aye.
Councilman Sharbutt?
Aye.
Mayor Ketcher?
Aye. All ayes. Those motions have passed. Item 6, resolution directing the publication of Municipal Code Corporation's Supplement Number 17-20 as a biennial supplement of the Code of Ordinances pursuant to 11 OS Section 4-110. David Anderson?
Mayor, members of the council, this is a housekeeping matter. People wonder sometimes, I think, how the ordinances are put together so that people can look at them, and there are a couple of different ways. One of the ways is the statutory way. In Oklahoma law says that a city council shall publish an original official book that codifies all of the municipal ordinances in effect. The statute goes on then to say that you can supplement that original volume with what we call loose leaf supplements. And those loose leaf supplements are compiled by a corporation called the Municipal Code Corporation. Whenever you pass an ordinance, we email the content to the Municipal Code Corporation, and every so often, every so many months, they'll compile them and they'll assign a supplement number, and then we ask you to approve that supplement as part of the official publication of the Code of Ordinances. That's what's before you tonight. It's separate and distinct in a sense from our effort to keep the online version of the Code of Ordinances current, but that's a similar operation also with the Municipal Code Corporation. But I do ask and recommend that you approve the resolution before you so that our official hardbound compilation of our ordinances is technically in legal compliance and current.
Questions, gentlemen?
Motion approved.
Second.
Councilman Trussler?
Aye.
Councilman Sharbutt?
Aye.
Councilman Johnson?
Aye.
Councilman Schultz?
Aye.
Mayor Ketcher?
Aye. All ayes. That has passed. Item 7, disposition of the city's retirement plan authorization to offer an early retirement window and options for restructured dissolution and/or conversion of the plan. Jeffrey Bishop.
Thank you, Your Honor. This item is the action item that's companion to the workshop that City Council held late last year. As you will recall from that workshop, staff presented to you the latest actuarial analysis of the retirement plan, which indicated that from an actuarial standpoint that the fund was technically underfunded by $4 million, and from a current perspective was underfunded by $2 million. During that workshop, staff presented some information regarding the theoretical reasons behind that, and primarily it was two areas that we were having difficulties with. One is that the actuarial assumptions for establishing the amount that the city contributes to the retirement fund was based on an assumption that the fund would realize a 7% return on an annual basis. And that's a normalized return. Didn't expect that from a standpoint of every year that you'd have 7%, but that over a period of time that there would be a 7% return. Well, unfortunately, because of the economy, it's been many years since we were able to realize a yield of 7% on investments. That's complicated by the fact that the fund, being a animal of the city, and the trustees and all defined benefit plans, all trustees have a personal liability to a certain degree for the performance of those investments. As a result, from a historical standpoint, the investment strategy, if you will, has been very conservative. It's predominantly bonds, certificates of deposit, low risk instruments that produce it at current a very, very, very low yield. And a very robust and aggressive stock strategy, but unfortunately a very small portion of the total investment of the portfolio. And that portfolio has performed very well for the city in the past. The firm that handles that for the city has done a remarkable job, and there has been a good equity increase, but it has fallen way short of the 7%. So what happens then is if you're assuming that when you set what your contribution rates are based on a 7% yield and you're not realizing that, then you're going to constantly fall short of funding the fund to the level that you need to. So because of that problem and the fact that it had some very specific budgetary impacts that we were going to need to address before the budget season started, staff brought to you several options to consider. The city offers what is known as a defined benefit plan, which from a layman's term means it's basically a pension. Is that the employee receives I shouldn't say the employee, but the retiree receives a guaranteed sum of money on an ongoing basis, very similar to what Social Security is like. In that scenario, the risk for shortfalls is on the part of the employer, whereas there's a very high security for the employee in that scenario. Other opportunities, I shouldn't say other opportunities, but trends in the retirement industry is to convert to what is known as a defined contribution plan. And that's whereby you actually define and specify a certain amount of money that is going to be contributed into a retirement account. Most commonly known in the private sector as a 401k. In the public sector, it's known as a 401a. But that amount of money is put into it in an annual basis and then invested in some vehicle. The employee then has the discretion as to how aggressive to get with that investment, whether they want to be conservative or aggressive. So it kind of flips the roles here in that particular scenario. The other aspect that we talked about during that workshop was the possibility of offering a early retirement with staff in an effort to reshape our budget and take money that is currently in the budget devoted to salaries and transfer that to our capital outlay and our capital improvement plan. So to that end, in order to proceed with any of those, some decisions and some direction to the trust, and it's not a trust in the sense of a public trust from Title 60 that we're going to talk about later tonight, but it's still a trust and from a law standpoint, to the trustees to make some changes to the plan, or we'll have to address the underfunding in the budget cycle. So, in your packet, in the memorandum attached to that item, I had outlined a series of 3 distinct decisions to be made. One is, regardless of what you want to do from a long-term standpoint, you have a legal obligation to maintain the defined benefit plan that current retirees have. You cannot escape that responsibility. You have an obligation to provide a certain amount of benefit to those that have become vested in the plan. And you become vested after contributing in our plan after a period of 10 years. So that being said, you have 2 choices as to what you can do with that particular plan. One, you can budget more money. 2, you could entreat the trust to get more aggressive on its investments, but that inversely creates more risk for the trustees. And I would imagine, being that I'm one of those, I would probably request that the city consider a more aggressive liability policy for the trustees in the event that the investments don't deliver. I want to make sure that, again, I point out that this is really, there's no fault here of the current entity that is managing our funds. This is purely a function of the market at current and our conservative investment strategy. The other option would be to take the defined benefit plan and move it to one of the other plans that are available in the state. And there's 2 plans that are available. There's the state plan, and then there's the Oklahoma Municipal Retirement Fund, which is the predominant defined benefit plan provided to municipalities. By moving it, we transfer the liability from our trustees to their trustees. And they do have a more aggressive investment strategy. And if you look at it over the long term, they have met their 7% return. Even when you factor in the years when the market had some volatility and equity was lost in the fund, they have made that up over the period of time.
Jeff, while you're taking a little break there, clearing your throat, would you mind telling the public what we as trustees, there's 3 of us, the obligations we have and what we can face?
Well, the employer has liability naturally, but because of the fact that the employer isn't making the decisions that you've appointed a committee, there is some personal liability for the committees. Now, I don't want to start practicing law unless it's to my advantage, but well, there is the attorney present tonight. He might be able to expand on that. But the bottom line is that if we mess up, we've got some exposure as individuals, just like you do to a certain degree if you make a decision that is deemed to be outside the purvey of your official capacity, that you could and have on occasion been served in legal actions.
The role that the trustees serve, and I'm trying to remember who they are, Jeff. It's the city manager, the mayor, and who else? One of the utility board chairman.
City clerk.
They serve in a role of what we lawyers might call a professional fiduciary, meaning that you are serving in a role that charges you with the knowledge of a professionally trained, prudent investor. But it turns out, however wise you may be, that's really not your career, and that's really not where you have personal expertise. And so, by virtue of your offices, you've accepted a trust responsibility that's frankly supposed to be filled by somebody with professional qualifications and experience. It's not a good situation ultimately.
Plus, I might add, the three of us, we're not paid anything. Scott and I are serving for our community, so we're just here.
Well, if you're gonna stick your neck out, you might as well
Yep.
do it for nothing.
So that being said, one of the options would be to look at moving to another fund. Now, council, and I'm talking not about regular city council, I'm talking about our plans council, has indicated that we're not able to do that unless we find a product that is equal to or better than our current product. And fortunately, we were able to find a plan that is offered by the Oklahoma Municipal Retirement Fund that is equal to or superior than our current product, and that's a determination that was made by our attorney looking at the two plans and comparing them. In that scenario, and in the analysis that was provided to you at that workshop, the cost to the city is fairly comparable to the amount that our actuaries say that we are supposed to be contributing now. So it's as close to budget neutral as we can get in this whole scenario. So that's decision number one.
Okay, yeah, if I may, it's close to budget neutral, but because of the better return, it improves the outcome for the taxpayers ultimately, because we as a city are not going to have to contribute to get that fund balance up. It's going, because of the better return, the fund balance is projected to grow.
That's correct. Now, the only thing about that is that's a time calculation.
Right.
So it assumes that you maintain the defined benefit plan over a long period of time. The budgeted contributions eventually make up the underfunded portion of your current plan. You follow me?
Yes.
I'll make sure everyone, because that's a very important concept. Because if we change the plan, then we may alter whether or not the contribution that we're currently making is enough to make up the current underfunded portion of the plan. There's kind of a spatial relationship there that we have to honor. So that's question number one, is whether or not you want to continue with the current plan, which will cost more, and even if it costs more, you're still going to have to get more aggressive with your investment strategy, or we'll need a remarkable improvement in the economy that affects interest rates. Or we look at moving the plan to OMRF.
Can we make a motion?
If you want, I can go on to the next two decisions that need to be made.
Yes, please.
And then allow you to consider each of them at one time or in any fashion that you want.
I think it's important that we understand what would come after if we do that.
Okay. The other element of this is our council has advised us not to offer an early retirement option, which we're currently recommending to you on the basis of Rule of 80, which means basically your time in service plus your age is equal to or greater than the number 80, or a 5-year service credit, whichever benefits the employee more, until such time as you have completely decided what you're going to do with your retirement benefit. In other words, you can't offer an early retirement and then immediately change the plan, because the employees that would consider the early retirement offer may not have made the same decision had they known what you were going to do to the plan. So it, in essence, becomes the last decision that you need to make. So let's jump to the next one. Even with the OMRF, the amount of contribution that the city makes is still going to be a very dynamic number. It will not be static. It will not be constant. we will not know how much money that we will have to contribute into the fund until we get that estimate either from our actuary or their actuary, which in this case happens to be the same guy. We use the same actuary. So there's no predictability year in and year out. With a defined contribution plan, you set that amount. So you can budget for it every year knowing what the percentage is going to be that you have identified contributing into a defined contribution plan. To convert, to, excuse me, sir?
Is that set each year annually or
Um,
combined?
You could, but I would recommend that you put it on more of a long-term basis so that there's some continuity and some predictability for the employee as well. But there's nothing that says you couldn't add to it each year, or for that matter, make adjustments. I mean, if you can't afford to put 6% aside, then you might want to consider budgeting 5% the next year. I mean, there's no legal requirement for you to provide a retirement benefit at all. It is a retention issue. It is a benefit that you use to compete with other employers to entice employees to work for you. So yeah, you don't have any legal requirement for a certain amount. Now you would with the OMRF in a defined benefit plan. If you agree to become part of that plan, you will agree then to pay whatever is required to fund that obligation. The difference between the defined contribution and the defined benefit is that it primarily changes the risk from the employer to theoretically to the employee. Now, my whole life I've preferred to be in defined contribution plans as opposed to defined benefit because it gives me the ability to decide what I want to do with my retirement. That's not a universal perspective, and it changes from individual to individual. But from an employer standpoint, what it does allow you to do in this particular situation is it allows you a method of taking your current defined benefit plan and moving it to another location, another administrator, and then allowing you then to bring back the defined contribution plan and offer it to vendors locally. Which, from that scenario, then you provide an opportunity for local vendors to compete on that and provide that benefit where the future massing of investment strength would be.
Rudy, do you have a comment on that? Locally?
I mean, I like that. Of course, right now, in theory, we do business locally because we have a local financial institution that is I'd say the contact point, but they hire, someone, frankly, out of New York to manage it, and it's good that they do. There's a very competent person. As Jeff said, the equities part of and the small portion that it is done well. It's just the mix. It's just a small portion. So, like everyone, we always want to do business local where we can. I think personally that it's important to move the current fund to the OMRF and get the benefit of their expertise and a better return for those employees, retirees, and vested employees that are currently in there, so they can have confidence that the check's going to be there and cashed every month, but there's not going to be an inordinate burden on the taxpayers to meet that obligation. And as Jeff said, the numbers don't lie. They're there, and that number's going to have to go up pretty significantly to meet that obligation. So I like that part of it. And then I too like, as the representative of the taxpayers, looking at the defined contribution plan. I understand the security it provides employees, but it also limits them in a way. As Jeff pointed out, he likes to be in control of where those investments go. So that's a longer answer, I think, than what your question was, but I do like the fact that we then would be able to allow local people to bid, if you will, on representing our employees and their investments.
Well, I know that area was a grave concern of yours and all of us here. We like to keep our business here what we can.
Yep.
So to cut to the chase, if I may, Your Honor, staff's recommendation is to move the defined benefit plan to OMRF, to freeze the plan, to convert all future contributions to defined contribution plan, and then authorize the trust to offer an early retirement window based on the rule of 80 and the 5+ years and/or the 5+ years of service credit, however it best suits the needs of the employee.
Those have to be separate motions, David.
No.
Any more discussion?
So the motion is just to direct the
Accept.
trustees.
Staff's recommendation.
That's what I would say.
Go ahead, Joe.
I would make a
I just
motion
want
to
to be
go
clear
with
on the wording.
staff recommendations.
I'll second.
Okay. Councilman Schultz?
Aye.
I'm sorry, Councilman Sharbit.
Aye.
Councilman Johnson?
Aye.
Councilman Schultz?
Aye.
Councilman Tressler?
Aye.
Mayor Ketcher?
Aye. All ayes, that has passed. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, Jay.
Your Honor, just as a follow-up, there will be some workouts on this as far as timing of the liquidation of our investments. And I suspect the trust will probably be back to you with another recommendation on how to implement this at a later date. But I just don't want that to come as a shock to you because we, as you can imagine, we have some time-related deposits in our current retirement that would not be available today. So we're gonna have to look at a liquidity plan for being able to either move those investments to OMRF or provide an alternative.
Okay. Okay. Item 8, amendment of section 27-2 of the Code of Ordinances, which may include a cap of the number of job positions and pay ranges available to the city manager for each budget year, and a requirement that each annual budget itemize each such job position and pay range. If an emergency clause is requested, it must be voted upon separately and approved by the affirmative vote of at least 3/4 of all members of the city council. Jeffrey, that's you, and David Anderson.
From a mechanical standpoint, you want to do this one?
Oh, I'd be happy to. You have a, one of the things that I've been asked over the years is how much control the city council has over a city manager's decisions to hire personnel, for what positions, under what pay range or terms. And I think that question's been asked a lot, both by current and former city councilmen. The answer has always been in our city charter. It says that at Article 2, Section 6, subparagraph 3, that all powers of the city, including the determination of policy, shall be vested in the council, including, under paragraph 3, raise revenue, make appropriations, regulate salaries and wages, and all other fiscal affairs of the city. What I have prepared for you in your consideration is an ordinance that does a couple of things. First of all, it provides that each year in making a presentation, in the city manager's presentation of a budget, that he would be required to describe the number of positions proposed to be funded by that budget. FTEs, or full-time equivalents, part-time and seasonal employees. The ordinance also proposes that the city manager's budget proposal would have to show a low, mid, and high point for compensation or a pay range for each of those positions. The ordinance further states that when the city council would approve a budget, that you would require that an exhibit be attached to that budget, and that that exhibit would list the approved positions, the number of positions, and the pay ranges authorized for each of those positions within which the city manager would have managerial discretion. And then finally, to avoid some repetition, really a smaller issue, this ordinance since it provides that these matters and salary ranges and positions would be published not only in the budget proposal but in the final budget, it provides an amendment that would remove the requirement that you would additionally publish these things in each February of each year by removing that position. And then, well, I said finally, but finally, the proposed ordinance would prohibit any city manager from hiring personnel or authorizing a pay range beyond the limitations imposed by the city council in the budget itself. Although the city council could, in any particular case-by-case event, authorize a specific departure by written resolution voted upon at a public meeting, but that it would have to be handled that way. Those matters would have to be addressed by written resolution at a public meeting. In doing so, I think it creates a measure of fiscal control and predictability for the city that you may find beneficial.
Your Honor, if I may, what I'm doing by placing handcuffs on myself is I'm providing for long-term benefit from the early retirement that you just offered. All too often in municipal organizations, you have a thing called mission creep, and it is very possible that over a period of time, if we freed up a lot of budget capacity through these attrition designed programs, that we could negate the benefit of that by slowly but surely over time hiring back employees to do this or that. This provides some oversight by the elected officials in the size of city staff and in the actions that the city manager takes regarding compensation. And since you have already adopted a formal pay system, it takes the whole concept out, or the whole discretion for salary actions out of a subjective process and puts it into the confines of some objective process whereby we've all agreed that this is how things work. So to that degree, you know, I've already told you on many occasions that I prefer situations where the amount of discretion that staff has is explicitly defined, so that we have guidelines and processes in place that allow us to make those decisions in a framework that's been approved by you. And to that end, staff would submit this ordinance for consideration for you tonight. Staff would also request that the council approve an emergency clause for this ordinance to allow for its immediate effect.
Before a motion is considered, and I realize you may have further discussion, the version that will be presented for signature has 3 very small departures from the version in the packet. One would be the date. The document was prepared to reflect a signature of January 21st, and of course that meeting was changed to today, the 24th. Second, the last paragraph on page 1 on the 3rd line mentioned a repealer of section 27.2, and I've changed that to say an amendment of section 27.2. And then finally, within the body of the proposed ordinance on page 2, there was a typing error within the quotation marks. It said section 27-1 was going to be the caption for the ordinance, and that was a mistake. It's supposed to say section 27-2 to be consistent. And I've made those corrections, and I would ask that if there's a motion to approve this ordinance, that that be made with consideration of this announcement.
I'll make a motion to approve with corrections as David stated.
I would second that motion and just add that I think staff did an outstanding job in crafting this ordinance.
I agree.
Appreciate Jeffrey's efforts on this. Wasn't called for, but he saw the need for it. We all appreciate that.
Well, I just had an idea. David is the wordsmith, so,
Is he?
yeah, he's totally responsible.
Well, he did the work, but it's your idea.
This is idea.
Okay.
Councilman Johnson?
Aye.
Councilman Schultz?
Aye.
Councilman Sharbit?
Aye.
Councilman Tressler?
Aye.
Mayor Ketcher?
Aye, all ayes, that has passed. Thank you.
Make a
Big
motion for
time.
emergency clause.
Second.
Before you vote, and I would ask that you consider amending your motion, Councilman Johnson, to include a determination on the emergency that it's necessary to implement the ordinance immediately to avoid the duplicative effect of having to follow the existing ordinance before we implement the new one. In other words, spending a lot of money on publications. So with that, would you be willing to amend your motion?
Yes.
Thank you.
Second.
Councilman Johnson?
Aye.
Councilman Schultz?
Aye.
Councilman Tressler?
Aye.
Councilman Sharbit?
Aye.
Mayor Ketcher?
Aye, all ayes, so the emergency clause is passed also. Item 9, accept staff recommendations and authorize mayor's signature on feasibility study agreement for city building renovation or new construction. Chuck Childs? Evening, Chuck.
Good evening, Mayor. Thank you. Staff has been looking at the current building that we're in here now. A lot of costly maintenance issues to address, compliance issues, the functionality, the different work groups, and what we've done is solicited qualifications from architects